need support staff to clear the room. Stand up and walk, now.
Hello, and welcome to The Watch. My name is Chris Ryan. I am an editor at TheRinger.com, and joining me in the studio, Joel Embiid's appendix doctor. It's Andy Greenwald.
This is going to be such a good podcast.
This is a different look for us. Usually I'm the one who's professional and I'm the one who's on top of it, and I've got the document. You come in and you're just like, I used to be a critic and now I'm on the other side of the table.
Wait, that was uncanny.
Yeah. But I'm pretty tired, man. I just got off the plane from San Francisco, had a great show with Bill and Mal and Van and the whole Rewatchables crew there last night.
You mean also Craig?
And Craig?
Craig was below the line then. You didn't get the name.
Craig was on stage last night.
I know, but
Craig was right next to me.
You're like the whole team.
I'm sorry. Do you want me to start the
No,
pod over again?
Ever since, I don't know if you know, ever since I went on the Rewatchables and
Van just spent like 5 minutes of Ringer Tailgate referring to me as Sean. So I think everybody's just trying to piece it all together. It's great to see you though. You're my homing beacon.
I'm excited. There's a little grit in your tires today.
Yeah.
You can hear it in the voice.
Yeah. Couple of Modelo's, couple of small beers. Yeah.
Just a couple of small beers. The implication though, that this is usually the reverse, that usually you're on point and buttoned up and I'm hungover. No, but I just think you're like, come what may. Let's see what happens when the lights go on. That is true. I do come from an improv background.
It's really good to see you though, man. I was looking for stuff for us to talk about today, aside from the Pitt and Top Chef, which we will address. I'll give you a little bit of a programming update. Okay. Not you, but for our listeners.
I'm always curious.
That will be hitting up Euphoria Season 3, Episode 1 on, I think, Sunday night. I think we'll just put that jam out on Sunday night.
Why not?
The great work of this podcast is that I never really know what Andy is going to think of a show, but I have a feeling we got a new convert in the Church of Rue.
Well, I would say... I can't say anything.
Okay.
I was gonna make a reference to something that happens in Euphoria
301 because this is coming out Thursday.
I would just say that conversion of belief is relevant to that episode.
What to talk about? Well, first of all, I did want to bounce a couple of superhero headlines off of you.
Let's go.
Number one is, who is Maxima?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for your question. I want to be as I want to speak to the layperson when I say this.
That's great. This is a Superman character.
I have no fucking idea. I think I am on record as a Marvel guy, so a little bit cooler, and but also like with James Gunn, and we all respect this about Big Jim Gunn.
One day, Kai, if you're like, I have nothing to do for a week, will you put together a montage of him making references to Marvel and just have Marvel guy and an arrow pointing at him? Sorry, I saw that there were a bunch of well-regarded actresses trying out for this role, auditioning for this role.
I don't know which list you saw because it was actually a little bit controversial yesterday.
Why?
You were strolling the city by the bay, just trying to game out how Alcatraz is going to go from tourist attraction to full Nicolas Cage the prison in a matter of months.
I did keep saying like somebody would be like, oh, check that piece of skyline. I was like, is that Alcatraz?
You thought it was all Alcatraz? Possibly. To answer your question, I have no idea about minor Superman supporting characters. And even if I did, I think that James Gunn's knowledge of like the C and D listers goes even deeper. And that's a credit to him because he makes these characters, like he did with Guardians of the Galaxy, important to millions of people around the world. From what I gather, this is an alien character who is a potential love interest for Superman.
With or Lois Lane, though.
Well, there can be a super triangle. I believe that's possible. Or, as I was just reading as the number one headline on Hollywood Reporter, Nikki Glaser likes her boyfriend to date other women. And so maybe that's what Lois is like.
Is this a bit that she's doing, though? Or is she like, I actually am in an open relationship?
Reader, I didn't click it.
Well,
Kyle, did you read the article?
Why would she have read the article? You just discovered it.
She said she'd already seen it. Don't put this on me.
Well, so this is an aggregation from her appearance on Call Her Daddy, I believe. So it made the rounds on Twitter yesterday. And, I also didn't care to actually click on the video and watch her full.
This is gold. Like, clip this.
This is how they do it at the Free Press. They're like, sounds good.
Publish. Anyway, no, there was some controversy yesterday because Deadline reported that a number of
Marisa Abella
actresses were auditioning, including Industries' Marisa Abella, and James Gunn was just like, this is all untrue. I am a fan of these people, but that is not.
Oh,
these are not the droids I've been looking for.
Here's the thing: we can always count on Jim to clap back and be like, fake news. Now, did he say Maxima's not in it, or just I have not talked to these ladies?
He's never. First of all, this guy's never giving up on X. That's his preferred communication strategy. No, then, and this was in Hollywood Reporter. And Hollywood Reporter was like, actually, we have the exclusive. Which, by the way, every time we aggregate the trades, it is worth noting they are all owned by the same company. Yeah. So it's very funny when they compete with each other in this way. That apparently the actual final list for the role of Maxima, someone I am unfamiliar with.
Man, if you're unfamiliar, imagine how I feel.
Adria Arjona, Ava De Domenici, Sydney Chandler, and Grace Van Patten, the latter of two of whom have starred on television shows recently
Grace
that we
Van
have
Patten,
talked about.
Personal fave. She was great in Tell Me Lies.
So that's the list. Who do you want to be your alien warrior queen? Who you got?
Be curious to see Marisa in it.
Yeah, but she's not in the mix.
But like that's just one trade's opinion, you know?
Okay. Oh, we're going off book today? All right.
That's just one trade's opinion.
Who do you want to be cast as Maximo?
Is that guy in Marvel? Marvel, is there a Maximo in Marvel?
I'm just having fun now. Probably.
Another thing that happened in the world of superhero headlines.
This is really, what's incredible is we should lead with this. You were in San Francisco with the crew. I watched like 7 hours of television.
I've got it.
And we're starting with casting rumors for characters we don't even know about.
I'm trying to contribute. I can't really.
It's fine.
You weighed in on it. You know, when you weigh in on these TV shows, I'm just going to kick back and watch.
Okay.
That's my show for the week. Is watching you cook.
That's fine.
On Friends and Neighbor. The only other thing I was going to bring up is the Punisher One Last Kill special presentation trailer dropped today. This is from John Bernthal because he co-wrote it with Ronaldo Marcus Green. Ronaldo Marcus Green, his frequent collaborator, worked on We Own This City with him, is directing this. I guess in the spirit of the Werewolf at Night. Is that what it was called?
Werewolf by Night, yeah.
Werewolf by Night. This is kind of like a one-off, although Punisher, obviously a long-running character for Marvel and the MCU.
And this is the new Spider-Man movie.
And the new Spider-Man. I don't know if the two knew about each other here because this seems like a very gritty, profane version of Frank Castle, whereas the Spider-Man one seems to be closer to like
a little quippy.
Yeah, a little bit more. They got some Tony Stark in my Punisher.
Well, they contain multitudes.
Sure.
You know.
This seems bleak, violent, interesting. Here's the problem with me and Punisher.
Okay.
Every single time I'm like, I'm back. And every single time I don't really find, maybe it's like the character itself has sort of missed its window of relevance. What do you think? I mean, like, but every time I see the Punisher on screen, I'm like, that's not exactly how
you prefer vigilante justice
to be executed. Yeah.
That's fine. You have your own, we all have our own way. Yeah. I mean, you're right about that big picture. I think the character, broad strokes, is pretty limited, if not abhorrent. There have been some really, really good comic book runs with the character, but I think generally on screen, it's pretty limited unless he's being used as a foil to characters that are frankly more interesting. Like the way that Marvel has used this version of him recently in relation to Daredevil or potentially in relation to Spider-Man. Let me put it to you this way, because we're going to watch this. This is a, one-off, 1 hour, potentially, Bernthal going full auteur mode.
Looks like he's just in the raid.
This is his Bradley Cooper's Maestro, I believe. Is this a heat check moment for your guy? And the reason I ask this is because, listen, no one loves John Bernthal maybe more than you. Generally, we really like his performances. We like it when he shows up at things. He lifts up everything he's a part of.
It's true.
Currently, he is on Broadway with another, I would say, friend of the pod, kind of, Eben Moss-Bacharach. They are in a adaptation of Dog Day Afternoon, which has been savaged by critics. And I
think some critics have seen some good things in it.
This is the same critics that cast Marisa Abela as Maxima. So this is just your news. That's fine. The reviews that I read,
I'll be the judge. Okay. I'll go see it and I'll let you know how it is.
You're gonna do your own research.
Yeah, I'll let you know.
The reviews that I saw definitely came close, tiptoeing up to the edge of saying Bernthal at this point was doing Bernthal shtick. And I wonder then that coupled with him being like, I shall write myself a Hamlet using Frank Castle, and Hell's Kitchen is my Denmark, might be a prove it moment. I don't know.
Here's my zag on that.
Okay.
This is the reverse Paltrow. This is
great.
Gwyneth Paltrow. Plenty of people in the MCU have been like, am I in that? When do I have to go to Atlanta? What are we reshooting now?
Not Atlanta anymore, son.
Well, whatever. Where are they shooting it now?
London.
Oh, cool.
Do you know that I've been there recently? That's how I knew. Which camera? That's how I knew. Go on. I just blew up your whole spot. Reverse Paltrow.
It's just cool that he has like accrued. He's like, I'll keep playing Punisher.
Yeah.
But one day, me and Ronaldo are making like a true vengeance thriller,
like what we want
R-rated, dark fucking like, and then I'll show up and I'll make jokes with Tom Holland. But it's about like basically like taking all the chips and pushing them in the middle, and actually like caring about what happens to the character that you're playing. Now, I mean, this could be completely over the top and ridiculous. Bernthal might be just whether or not you rock with him or not. It might just be that like it's the kind of like what happened with Pacino at a certain point where he just gets sort of pigeonholed into a couple of gestures that he has as an actor
and asked to do those,
and maybe that's what he's relying on. But I still find him really creative and charming and surprising in almost everything he's in.
He's electric every time he shows up, and
but
I will
obviously
say
this kind of role and this part and being like a tortured vigilante is kind of his bag right now. Like he likes playing this part.
Even I have to say, as the self-professed Marvel guy, that like. I am a fan of this type of comic book storytelling in which you can have a version of a Punisher that shows up in a Spider-Man comic book, for example, or a Spider-Man movie. But then Marvel will also publish something under its like Max designation, which is basically like a R-rated comic or a PG-13 comic, where Punisher does the things that actually a character named the Punisher who carries all this.
He drops F-bombs and stuff.
Yeah, so you can have both can exist. You know, it's just like you on this pod versus you on, you know,
Brave New World under Josh D'Amaro.
Yeah, Josh. Well, or does Josh D'Amaro tacitly supporting vigilante justice? His first release under his regime
is Iger out by the time this comes out? No,
he's out already.
He's fully out.
He was out when they announced it. He was like clearing out his palatial office, and he didn't take an office down the hall that was slightly bigger, he did with Chapek.
Okay, so while I was away, you relentlessly pursued greatness.
my true passion.
Yeah.
Which is watching television.
I want to hear all about it. So you there's a couple of things on right now that I think you are either pot committed to as a longtime watcher, a little bit more curious about where it went from where it was, like Friends and Neighbors. Was there anything else that you checked out besides Boys and Friends and Neighbors?
No, I just, well, I mean, no, but in the day you were gone, I was Top Chef, Euphoria, The Boys, and Your Friends and Neighbors.
You're an animal. Like, please run free, leash off. This dog park is just for you.
It was okay.
Okay.
How much time do we have left?
It's hard, isn't it?
It's real hard.
It's hard hosting.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like we may revisit some of these shows, or maybe we'll do a more extended, or I'll do a little extended off-Broadway one-man show about some of them. I guess I'll say this about my experience watching. So The Boys has 2 episodes up. Your Friends and Neighbors has 1 episode up, and I will not.
The last time I was watching The Boys was the Soldier Boy. What's that character's name?
Soldier Boy, the rapper.
What's the character on
Soldier Boy? But it's spelled differently.
It's not Soldier Boy, is it?
Yes, it is. It is, but it doesn't have a J.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It's spelled Soldier.
Right.
Yeah. And that character and actor will be
Jensen Ackles.
Yeah. Jensen Ackles will be reprising that role on the upcoming Boys prequel series, also starring our friend Aya Cash. And he's back. But I think you've missed season 4.
Okay.
I no spoilers for this portion, just to say that I did find this exercise interesting in the conversation that we are having and that we will be having on Sunday night about ongoing television shows. Because as we've been saying, and as we will prove on our Sunday night show, I have engaged with Euphoria completely cold, having seen nothing and Googling nothing. And boy, was it freeing. And to do that at the same time while I'm watching these shows, one in its second season, one in its fifth and final season, and seeing the ways that shows these days with the production demands in terms of like delays between seasons or lack of thereof in the case of Your Friends and Neighbors, expectations of the audience, et cetera, how they engage with what used to just be making TV. I will say that the thing about The Boys is that it is very, very, very hard to... This was also the text of the Stick the Landing podcast. It's really hard to end things.
Sure.
Because in the final stretch, every choice you make and everything you do is almost a metatextual comment about the show that you've been making and how you want it to be, as opposed to ongoing concerns where things could change. There's a sense of possibility, a sense of creativity, a sense of limitless stakes.
Well, there's also The Boys is now a full-on television franchise and has multiple spinoffs.
But does it? That's the other thing. Like it felt quite expansive for a moment, and then it did have its Gen V spinoff that I sort of dropped out of after one season. And from what I understand, I don't know if they plan to continue it, but it seems like the second season of that show really functioned as story spackle between the seasons of The Boys, making it essential, or actually, because to the spirit of my Euphoria point, kind of inessential, because they talk about what happened in season 2 of Gen V in passing, in terms of like, now we have the virus. Not like they have the virus. They're all doing quite well. But like they have it in a little vial. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay. First 3 episodes went up?
First 2 episodes, which was, they had been doing 3, and now like, why would they give that much away? Like at least extend it a little bit. I would say that if you have been a fan of the Boys previously, you will still be a fan of The Boys because it is still essentially the same show, and it is clever, and it is often at its most clever, I think, when it runs right past being like, we are a veiled analogy for what's going on in America, and it's just like, fuck it, this is what we're doing. Such as like the signs that say, in this house we believe in Homelander on people's lawns. And there's some teen characters in the second episode act like, as they are detaining people who support Starlight, they are also doing viral TikTok content promoting energy drinks while they escort mothers away from their children, which feels prescient. So all that stuff's good, and I think Anthony Starr is continuing to do, like, that guy. I'm not a really big fan of like, give this person an Emmy now, but this guy's really good and has been really good in a very thankless part.
Is there roadmap like the Garth Ennis comic? Does that have like an endpoint? They've blown past it.
I think that I think that it could be looked back on as a really creative and timely, and also just very practical adaptation. In a lot of ways. Like when the show premiered, I think people who were fans of the comic, which Garth Ennis also famous for writing probably the best Punisher stories, it is just depraved and so cynical. And they made changes in the beginning that some people were complaining about, but were necessary for the longer run of the show, like the Huey character, who's played still quite winningly
by Jack Quaid,
in the comics, kind of looks like a slightly smaller, sadder, pre-hair plug Simon Pegg, and not at all like the potential romantic lead of a 5-season Amazon Prime show. And as a nod to that, Simon Pegg played Huey's father in the show, but you needed that character to be this character to have some story instead of just carnage. And now we're reaching the end game when it's pretty much just going to be carnage, but also all the characters are like, Monsieur, I cannot sacrifice you to the
that
virus.
Guy's still kicking, huh?
Yeah.
The French dude.
And there's other stuff that you see that like in long running shows
power?
where his mind, he's not a soup.
Oh, okay.
He's just like a drug cook who also can cook up some virus. Am I selling you on the show?
I've watched 3 seasons of it. I think I was just like, I feel like I've gotten it. I never really found the Boys to be like bursting with dramatic tension. And so I guess that's why I was like, I feel like maybe after 30 hours or whatever, that's enough.
Yeah, but like I know that because you've watched the first 3 seasons that you're familiar with the character whose superpower is that his manhood is a giant
I remember that guy.
Person clubbing snake.
Yes.
Well, if you ever want to know how that guy's story ends, tune in.
I saw the first episode of DTF St. Louis. I know.
Fair enough. And there's just other little details where it's like, you could tell that Karen Fukuhara was like, I'm excited to come back for my final season on this hit show, but could I please stop being a deaf mute? And so then
did they give her like a musical scene?
They actually had a musical scene last season, but no, now she just speaks flawless American English.
Okay.
Claiming that she just had some therapy and watched a lot of TikTok in the off season. So now she just curses a lot like everybody else, which is fun for her, I would imagine. But yes, in terms of like the reason you watch though with a show like that, and the reason why I will continue to watch is because I've liked the way they built the story. I like a lot of the performers, and yeah, you kind of have to see how it ends because they are the one thing about the show. Not one thing, but one thing you do have to give it credit for is that it is relatively unsentimental, and so there will be a high body count and some sort of definitive ending.
So that's the show that is coming to a conclusion. The show that seems like it is perhaps getting ready for a 4-5 season run is Your Friends and Neighbors, which I think we covered relatively in depth last year.
Yeah.
And faded along the back stretch of the first season. Perhaps for me, and this is a factor with a lot of TV shows, is as the character palette expanded and it went to A, B, C, and D plots, the way I feel like a lot of long-running Apple shows sometimes do, and the way many television shows sometimes do, I found myself just like less urgently watching it. And then they bring on James Marsden for the second season. I haven't gotten a chance to check it out yet, but do you feel like they are setting this one up for 3-4 seasons of John Hamm looking great and sitting in cool cars?
What's remarkable about the show, and I kind of respect this, is that there is not even a shadow of an attempt to pretend that anyone's learned anything or anything's changed.
And they brought Munn back, right?
Yes.
Even though she murdered her husband.
Well, no, spoil it, she didn't.
Oh, okay.
But she did then try to, he died by suicide.
Oh, but then she tried to frame Coop because he broke up with her.
It happens. Just
ask Nikki Glazer.
I'm going to click now. I give the show credit for being absolutely clear-eyed about like, we're just going to hit a reset button and do it again. Lesser shows, and frankly better shows, have tied themselves in remarkable knots trying to get themselves back to some starting point or to wrestle with the really challenging corners that they've painted themselves into. This show does none of that. In the opening moments, Coop, looking amazing, is on a beautiful vacation in Mexico and he's drinking whiskey and women are flirting with him again. So thank God for that.
Yeah.
I think within that comment is also my ongoing criticism of the show. And I should say, if you have, what is, in Ferris Bueller, when he's like talking about the car and he's like, if you have the opportunity to drive it, you really should. That's how I feel about casting James Marsden.
Yeah.
At this point, like if you have the opportunity, it is so choice.
Get Wildcat on your cast, yeah.
He livens up every second of the show that he is in, and this is just through one episode that's been up, playing the part of an incredibly rich, incredibly charming guy who maybe has some secrets, but who cares because he throws good parties, is not, I would say, a challenge or outside of his wheelhouse. He's phenomenal. This show is also the kind of show where you introduce him and he says like, my name's Owen Ash, but everyone calls me Ash. And he's like, Andrew Cooper, but everyone calls me Coop. And they're like, let's touch tips, basically. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, that's the level that we're dealing with here.
But sword fight too, because isn't he the adversary kind of?
Not yet, but probably, yes. I say this with affection and respect because there are a lot of people involved in this show that I like and respect and care about a lot. Like Jonathan Tropper is a really nice guy when I've interviewed him. My good friend Zach Galler is doing beautiful work as the DP on this show. Amanda Peet is on this show and she's really good. The way that you were describing DTF St. Louis, which I thought was also very considerate and delicate, where you were like, perhaps this is...
I think it's a me problem.
That ultimately may be how I feel about this show, because fundamentally, like, it's not just that I bump on the show's aesthetic choices. Like, I think that the needle drops and the...
They're still doing narration?
The narration and also the, like, just the way... Like, the people on the show have no taste, but there doesn't seem to be any opinion about that. I said that last year as well. Like, what's his name? Marsden throws a party in his giant mansion that features, like, a gyrating woman playing electric violin and a DJ, and all the rich people are like, this electric violin is amazing. But I'm like, does anyone have an opinion about how stupid this looks or about how they look?
Can I just ask you a quick question?
Yeah.
Who was the hip-hop cellist? Miri Ben-Ari?
She wasn't a cellist. She was the violinist.
Hip-hop violinist.
She was all over College Dropout.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm curious her thoughts about Kanye these days, judging by her name. You know what I mean? I feel like she's probably got some thoughts.
I was just thinking about that was really funny.
The hip hop violinist?
We just had a hip hop violinist and we were like, this really takes things to the next level.
What about when we had a hip hop butler? Remember that dude, Farnsworth Bentley?
Oh yeah.
He's like, I'm a butler with an umbrella. And we're like, that's sick. That's so cool.
I honestly can say, as somebody who was in the shit back then,
yeah, you were.
I never had an opinion on Farnsworth Bentley.
You don't have an opinion?
Yeah, I was like, this is a no-go zone for me. Like I'm more focused.
I'm sorry, I'm racking these G-Unit mixtapes right now.
I saw an Instagram video of a dude just getting excited at the 50 Cent intro for Get Rich and Trying, and he's just like,
that was you back in the day.
This is better than your friends and neighbors.
Honestly, yes, it is. It's just there's a moment, the show just has, it is a absolutely slippery, well put together. You can't get any purchase or grip around it because the characters don't really have any depth in terms of like what they're fighting for.
I think
the stakes of the first season was, how is Coop going to afford to maintain his lifestyle? And so his elder daughter, who is a legacy applicant, will get into Princeton and is also being recruited for tennis. And that is less interesting to me. And this idea that he's robbing his friends and neighbors, first of all, seems would be diminishing returns, because how many friends and neighbors does he have to keep up his multi-million-dollar lifestyle?
Sure, but he's got his friend, the maid, who's hooking him up with the intel about stuff.
Sure,
right?
But at a certain point, I believe one of these friends and or neighbors would be like, this spate of robberies has me spooked. I shall put in a state-of-the-art security system.
Look,
which to date has not happened.
I think my major issue with it was always that if you're going to put somebody in a criminal situation and are not going to play it for straight laughs, like you're not going to make like a comic satire of this world, and you're going to have him being hunted down by gangsters and getting into trouble with his pawnbroker and getting pulled into all these different scenarios where there's blood spilled, I think you have to kind of keep pushing to somewhere new every iteration.
I agree with this.
Look, not everything can be or should be Breaking Bad. But what Breaking Bad did was take a very basic idea, not dissimilar from the one that Your Friends and Neighbors is dealing with, which is a guy who's fallen on hard times in terms to criminality to support his lifestyle, but also mostly to support his family. And every season, every episode, every decision that Walt made was related back to this cascading series of decisions. To your point about Coop being basically at zero, starting season 2 exactly where he started season 1,
which is quite comfortable.
Which is quite comfortable. And all the characters kind of like, for some reason, we all live around one another still.
Yep.
Like, it just becomes like, this now has kind of moved into like Nightlight territory, and I have other Nightlights, but I know people who love the show, or really like the show.
I think that's very, very well said. I think that there are a lot of interesting stories to be told about the current economy that aren't all necessarily from the perspective of the maids, which would be a more interesting show. But you could talk about, and the show has given lip service to this idea of trying to keep up with the Joneses or whatever. But ultimately, that the show doesn't seem to be that interested in that. It seems to be interested in humanizing masters of the universe inside of their mansions and inside of their middle-aged malaise, which actually, from the outside, and by the way, I'm saying this with a body riddled with middle-aged malaise, I don't think it's as compelling, perhaps, as the people making the show believe it to be. And I think ultimately that's a bummer. And so like there's a scene when all the fellas in the neighborhood are talking about their like rotator cuff injuries in the sauna and about the new guy who's moving in with all his money. And then they make a joke about making America great again. And they're like, oh, no politics in the sauna, boys. And at that moment, I wish the sinkhole from Dark Knight Rises would just open beneath
That wasn't a sinkhole.
Westchester.
That was Bane. That was Bane blowing up Three River Stadium.
But he created a sinkhole with his explosions.
Yeah, there was a sinkhole
is a natural phenomenon.
Yeah.
In terms of all of these people dying, it could be a sinkhole. It
would be funny if Bane was like, I just happen to know that there will be a sinkhole right here under this football stadium.
That's actually kind of amazing. If Bane just like read the weather reports and understood geology so deeply. Yeah.
Two thumbs down.
I mean, I think you always keep your nose clean. Like, I think what you said makes more sense, that ultimately this is a nightlight. And I think that my frustration with it is that it's not, for me, it is not light and charming enough to be a nightlight, because it carries itself quite heavily. And the characters do things like, in this episode, Coop's daughter has her interview in another mansion for Princeton because she's still not in. And the guy's like, what do you think about this? And she's just like, I don't think you really care what I think, because, your generation created this as a legacy project to reward itself so that people like me will get to do the same thing on the backs of all of the, like, unlike the immigrants and Jews and these people who aren't accepted by your institutions, but also tennis. And he's like, whoa. And then we move on to a different scene. This version of the show is much more entertaining. There's just I'm eager to talk about Euphoria. But the only thing that I'll say is that I'm interested in absolute unreality phony baloney if it has some aestheticism to it.
Yep.
And that was what my struggle. And perhaps that's why it paled in comparison. I didn't mean to talk this long about the show, about the second season of which I've seen one episode of.
It's okay. I think we're talking more about, like, TV watching habits and what we go to television for. And there are times where I'm like, you know what, I really just want to be watching season 5 that we're on of Abbott. And I still think I've done every episode of Abbott. Like, I have time for that.
That's big in my house. The girls love Abbott.
But the 1 hour dramedy where nothing really ever is of consequence is kind of like, I'm pretty allergic to it at this point,
Yeah, and I am also finding that the show's vision of robbery, it's not like I'm some, like, I mean, I have seen the film Thief, but other than that, I don't really know. I wouldn't claim any expertise.
Sure.
But in this episode, there's an attempt to bring Hoon Lee's character, is an actor I really love, who plays Barney, his, like, financial advisor, into the criminal conspiracy. Mm-hmm. And in order to do that, you need to lay some track about why he would. And so within this episode, we meet his disapproving father-in-law, who thinks that he's not,
making enough
money and whatever. And so he has a kind of similar to Coop, like a fuck it, like let's do it the bad way. But I'm like, now I'm crunching the numbers, and now you're splitting the income 3 ways.
Yeah.
And at the end of season 1, Coop turned down, as explained in this episode, a potential 8-figure annual salary.
To go back to the office, right?
To go back to the office, and instead to just rob. And I'm like, look, no one will ever accuse me of being a quant, but I just feel like the math isn't mathin' here,
Let's talk a little bit about Adjusting Dude Spines Blind.
Thank you.
Let's talk about The Pitt, the penultimate episode, written by Noah Wiley and directed by Uta Breischwitz.
Was this a Noah written episode?
It was. Okay. And it was 8 p.m. We're still fucking here. We haven't punched out yet. People are digitizing their charts. It's weird that these last few episodes, to me, and especially this one, I struggle to remember patients now. Because the character drama in this, the way that they have set up the end of the season,
of like, character stuff's coming to the fore.
What are you still doing here?
Yes.
And that's what everybody is asking them. Everybody is telling these doctors, you can go now, you can go now, you can go now. And they're still hanging out, and they're still bantering, and they're still talking about what this day has done to them. And we had 2 basically major reveals. Robbie explicitly talking about his suicidal ideation to Duke. Yeah. This was what The Pitt does incredibly well. I want to remember the name of the actor who plays Duke, because it's somebody who I've seen a million times in a million things, Jeff Kober. And this is what this show does incredibly well. He has been sitting on a hospital bed for 9 hours. And he has basically had the dramatic beat of, Robbie, don't forget about me. Here I am on this gurney.
Well, he had the nurse
Sure,
Vivi
that
thing.
was fun too. And he's like gotten this tough news about his heart problem, right?
It appears that he has the same aneurysm on the aorta that the professor who thought he had kidney stones, who died and upset Ogilvy, the Ogilvy plot line.
Oh.
It is
where they were just like, we're just going to give you, this is a simple fix.
But
and
because he didn't see the MRI
or
the CAT scan, whatever it was, that's a ticking time bomb that can be seen and can be remedied.
But this guy's been basically relegated to background player for this season, and he gets one of the emotional payoffs of the season in this conversation with Robbie out in the ambulance bay. Robbie's bike has been hit, very metaphorical.
Yeah, for real.
And he is perhaps not going to be able to go on his trip. It turns out Duke's able to like get it into good shape, good enough shape to ride. But he's like, hey man, why don't you just let me take the bike back to my garage, and in a couple of days I'll have it up and running.
Yep.
And Robbie is like, I have to go. The revelation of this scene, I think everybody who's been watching the show knows how Robbie has been doing or feeling. And it's not altogether different than how he was feeling at the end of the first season up on the roof with Abbott. But the revelation is that it's not the pit that's bothering him.
It's everything else.
It's everything outside of the ED. And that it is a guy who, even though we get a little glimpse of his love life this season and a little bit of glimpse of his social life this season, it's all attached to the emergency department. It's all attached to that hospital. And
I just realized they call it ED so much because they don't want to give the estate of Michael Crichton anything.
I every single time I'm like, I'm not talking about erectile dysfunction, but I'm trying to honor their wishes by calling it the
midlife
ED.
malaise comes for all shows.
Yes,
it's fine.
And I thought this was a beautifully acted, beautifully written, beautifully executed scene that could have been way more like storming around and crying, and him just being like, I don't know if I want to be here anymore, like be anywhere anymore, was just really effective.
I'd note that Jeff Kober is an actor who's been acting for decades and has credits like from the 80s. He also from his Instagram bio, embracing bliss, author and podcaster, actor, meditation teacher, tintype photographer. So, I wonder if like he's got. I'm just asking. I wonder if he has a relationship with Noah. This is what I mean. I think that one of the low key, it's a low key brilliant part of the Pit, which is that Noah has been. He's a native Angelino, and he's been acting for so long. He has a community of people here that he wants to raise up, put on, whatever. And when you hear him talk about Sean Hattasey and their relationship, it's like we've always gotten along because we've known each other forever, and we at auditions or just being here, and in passing, we have a sibling-like relationship. So you put him on the show, it's just instant. And I don't know if he knows this guy prior to the show, but that sense of like, this is someone who will bring the right energy, who will be able to just be present in limited screen time up until that moment with that depth of zen or calm or self-reflection that is needed. It's a subtle way to seed story on a show that doesn't have a lot of real estate for long scenes of dialogue or long speeches normally. I'm totally with you on the triumph of that scene, and that will be and should be Noah's Emmy reel before he wins an Emmy again later this year.
Instead of him going doctor the fuck up.
Well, I kind of like that.
Yeah.
It reminded me of what you said to me last week about watching The Terror. So I felt a little bit seen. I thought this episode was a really interesting case study in the best of the Pit, this scene, and the entire slow-moving catastrophe of the patient with the spinal injury.
That's my kind of medicine.
Outrageous.
Yeah.
This episode was also the worst of the Pit in ways that took me out.
Okay, I bet I can guess what this is.
Let's get into it. I mean, this is also why I love having this show in my life, because we can granularly critique, point out, highlight.
Here's the thing. I know you're talking about Al Hashimi's reveal.
I'm not.
Oh!
I'm not.
Okay.
Not even. I'm not even.
Oh!
Oh, come on now. Was that from the Punisher trailer? I'm not familiar with the reference.
Good.
No.
Because I was going to fight you on that.
No, I thought that was fine.
Okay.
I felt, well, there were a couple minor things. One was when the tide goes out on the show in terms of momentum or a crush of patience or whatever, and we have some character beats, sometimes really good things come from it, like the three residents sitting around the paper shredder, all great. The other thing that sometimes comes up, and maybe this is what Noah wanted, and Noah's the EP, so that stayed in, there was a lot of dated pop culture references in the script, and it was a little quippy. So there was the like, okay, guy playing Clue, who doesn't have a clue, and then there was the like, oh, Rumblefish? Totally, let's make a Rumblefish reference.
Is Rumblefish set in Pittsburgh? No, or is it set in Tulsa because it's S.E. Hinton?
I would imagine so. We can't keep forgiving things because they're set in Pittsburgh. Like early in the season, I was like, this schmaltzy ballad. And then we get all this feedback being like, that was actually written by a Pittsburgh native singer-songwriter who's incredibly important and also puts French fries in sandwiches. And I'm like, okay, sounds good. I love Pittsburgh. I feel like, hey guys, big fan of Pittsburgh over here. Legitimately though.
Yeah.
Great town, great ballpark. There was the zinger about the, passion play and stuff. It just felt labored in the same way that the dialogue can feel labored when they do the turn to camera. Actually, this is what happens when many women are misdiagnosed with heart attacks.
We have a 50% chance of 80% of saving your life, but if we don't do it, it's 20-30 that you're going to not be able to walk again.
And then he turned to the women. The women were like, I too believe in living. And like that, I was like, okay. But that's the show. But I did feel... The big picture comment is that what you said at the beginning, that it is really interesting the way the show has done the opposite of what we expected, which is the tide has gone out at the end, right when we were expecting things to be crescendoing, and what's left for us to pick through, like shells on the beach, or what do you call the beach of the three rivers as they come together?
Oh, I don't know.
I don't know either.
A tributary?
Sure. Probably not. You know who we need? Geologist Bain. If you would like to dig deep
he blew Pittsburgh up. If you consider Gotham Pittsburgh,
yes, canonically,
I understand that it's not supposed to be considered Pittsburgh, but to me it is something of a Pittsburgh stand-in. Because that's Hines Ward out there.
This probably isn't for this podcast. That's Hines Ward out there.
It is Hines Ward.
I know. He's running.
Yeah. He finishes the play.
It's blown up, and then he turns around, right? And he's like, "Oh!"
He's like, "No!
Oh no!
Ben Roethlisberger! Not you!
Jerome the Bus Bettis!
Ben can take anyone, but not Big Ben."
Canonically, Christopher Nolan's Gotham goes from Chicago to Pittsburgh in the span of 2 movies.
Yes,
not just where he filmed it, but like just the vibes.
Well, this is also your MCU hopping from Atlanta to London now.
Oh, did you know that?
Get back to what you were saying though.
What is left is a surprising amount of room for banter, some of which is successful, some of which isn't, for characters to reflect on what's happened or what hasn't happened in their lives and their day and their career. And that is interesting to watch. There's been some like discourse this week about people saying the Pit isn't this, or the Pit is this, or you guys are watching it wrong because you, straw audience members, think it's a prestige drama when in fact it's not. It just nods towards some prestige elements in order to just, do its meat and potatoes kind of storytelling. And I think the beauty of the show is that it is so successful at binding these two very disparate threads of storytelling. And sometimes it succeeds in surprising ways and places. The Duke scene is the type of scene that, I don't know if I would have expected this show would have had time for, if not a coda to the season, maybe in the park afterwards or something, but they carved out space for it and it hit.
Mm-hmm.
Some of the other stuff, less so.
Okay.
But which isn't to dismiss all the character stuff, because I was referring to like the Duke Perla scene, like these little moments. Awesome.
Yeah.
Monica leaving for her life of mahjong and margaritas. Godspeed.
Very fun. I mean, I enjoyed the Mel McKay like Ren Fair bit where she's like,
good.
Maybe I should go get really into Revolutionary War reenacting. They're like, you should check that out.
I also think that just generally the night shift being saltier and just not being as like teach first.
Yeah.
What was the line? Like, what did they say to one of the patients? Shut your fucking mouth, I believe, was the medical diagnosis for the guy with the flag in his lung. Cool. Different energy.
At the end of last season, you have this mass shooting, you have this insane casualty event, and it renders all of these characters shells of themselves. Robbie's up on the roof looking out. And I think as audience members, we too are up on that roof with him after that first season. In this season, while the cyber attack or the shutdown in response to the cyber attack is complicated, it winds up probably costing a life and the English teacher because of the lack of scans. It's ultimately like probably more grinding for the characters than it is for the audience. Like, I kind of forgot a couple of times that they were doing the filing system, that they were doing semaphore to communicate what they were doing out there. And so I think that may be the root of what you're reacting to. Like, is that this is now pure character being written rather than reacting to action.
Yes, and the show is revealing itself as it necessarily had to. It's not a event series about one of the worst days in the history of the Pittsburgh hospital.
Yeah, it's not.
It is an ongoing television show.
Paradise.
And even in his interviews, because I think he's getting a star in the Hollywood Walk of Fame, so Noah's doing some press, he was saying that he would imagine, which means he knows because they're just about done writing season 3, that they are probably just going to jump to winter, just a couple months, and not do a massive time jump. So we will be, which probably serves them so they can continue some storylines in a more natural way. That's fine. I want to talk Langdon and I want to talk Al-Hashimi. What do you want to do first?
Let's do Al-Hashimi.
Okay.
This has probably been one of the more hotly debated characters and certainly new additions to the show. The way in which she reveals herself to Robbie at the end of the episode was probably a tad TV. It was like, rather than just be like, I need to talk to you for a second. Here's my story. And I had meningitis when I was a kid. I've been having these episodes now a little bit more frequently. She does it by having him come in to give her a second opinion on a case history. And as he's reading the case history, midway through, he realizes it's her. And in the cliffhanger of the episode is this you, Baran? So Baran Al-Hashimi is her name. I thought Sepide Moafi was quite good in that scene. Like, her eyes told you everything you needed to know. And I it is among the best cliffhangers of a season of cliffhangers. I can't wait to hear this conversation between them. Did it land for you?
Yeah, I think I like the show when it admits it's a TV show. I don't mind the convention. I prefer, of the two modes of extreme storytelling that the show does, I would prefer a dramatically staged cliffhanger to another chorus turns to camera to explain medical inequalities in this country. I also think, and we're going to find out exactly what's going on with her, because I think the report says that she suffered seizures as a child. And then he says, altered mental status from the infection, and kind of there's some ellipses, and that's when he turns.
Yeah.
It would help me, without even knowing where this is going, the idea that her sort of like preternatural calm and control is itself a performance and a choice within her performance, if that makes sense. If the character has something happening within her or some chaotic aspect of her health that needs to be managed, that the fact that she has from day one presented herself as borderline robotic, that helps me understand the performance choice, because the character needs to do that in order to maneuver in the world. That helps.
I think the flip of that would be is if you feel like you're seeing her, and because he is the center of the show, you kind of naturally gravitate to his POV. If you're seeing her through Robbie's POV, really, with the exception of Santos, everybody likes her except for Santos and Robbie.
True.
And Santos doesn't like her because she threatened her with a bad time with the records keeping and charting. And Robbie just seems to be like, I came in here looking for a huge fucking showdown with every single person I work with today. And like, my replacement can't be good because then I don't need to be here. And if I'm not here, I know what's waiting for me on the other side of the doors. I needed it. He almost needed it to be a disaster today so that he could be like, I guess I can't leave. So I think that I hear what you're saying. I will be curious too to see whether or not the diagnosis reveals a choice in performance, but different people on this show seem to have like very different styles of doing their parts, you know?
By the way, I realized that when I was talking about the things that kind of bummed me, like that wasn't among them, but there were a number of scenes that felt quite staged in terms of like the writer's room board says we have to get from A to B in this scene. The scene we're talking about, Al-Hashimi, like, it's a cliffhanger. It has to have some drama to it. Well done, no problem. The Robbie and Duke scene, a lot has to come out. Executed.
I also, I will say about the Al-Hashimi scene is that I felt like they leapt from these two are still kind of at each other's throats a little bit to like,
I respect you.
Great speech, man. Yeah. Come look at my diagnosis. Like they skipped like
they had to get there.
A couple of letters to get there. Yeah.
That's the way I felt about the Whittaker-Langdon scene. Where Whittaker, first of all, this entire scene is predicated on a Gilligan's Island reference that I know Whittaker was brought up on a farm, but
I made a Gilligan's Island reference on the rewatchables last night that fucking died. Like I like tried to
it's brave of you
compare
to admit this.
Basic Instinct to Gilligan's Island, and it was just like I honestly thought I was gonna have a heart attack.
Like, do you remember?
So quiet in the audience.
Do you remember when we started reading Bill Simmons and he was constantly talking about the White Shadow, and we were like, sure, because that was our that's the line.
Yeah.
Everything, and then we're like, that's ridiculous. Makes reference to Elf. You know what I mean? But like, I think that line has passed now. And so Whittaker, I know he grew up on a farm and maybe he had like limited broadband, but like, I don't think he was force-fed Gilligan's Island reruns at 4:00 the way we were when we came home from school. So that was one thing. But just the explosion happening in that moment, it's the nature of the show that you kind of have to go along with, as much as the nurses explaining their plight. Whittaker is a complicated character, a good actor. That's another side of the character. He was due for that. Here's where it fell. And they did the best they could with it, but it felt a little bit forced and shoehorned. And that's a good place as any to segue into the Langdon thing. I guess my question is, am I alone in this, or did you feel major relapse vibes happening in this episode?
I would love to ask whether it's Noah or whoever about this. The Pitt weave is now kind of like a thing where it's like, you think it's going to be Robbie who needs help, but what if it's Ashimi, and I still think there are even a couple of other people in that department who might become bigger patients, I suppose, than Robbie. Langdon being like, I've tweaked my back. Oh, it's so hard.
Yes.
I'm right over here by the pills. And then like the fake Whittaker being like, what are you doing, man? And he's like, I'm taking Advil. And I also don't know necessarily that like one kind of like 1 in 1,000 fix on a guy has fixed Langdon. I don't think the show is that simple to be like, he really can still be a doctor, so everything else is going to fall into place.
Yes. It was a lot of indicating stuff all happening at the same time in the same episode. Please, everything about the show is so meticulous. They have to mess up Patrick Ball's hair more. This man has not actually been working for 15 hours. That takes me out. I think the most old-fashioned TV thing about the show is not that it is a medical procedural starring Noah Wyle.
You never cease to surprise me about what's going to bother you.
It is. Kaya made a note. Kaya, do you agree with me about this? She's not ready for this.
Sure.
She laughed, so I thought I had a fan here. I thought I had some support.
Yeah.
Just ruffle the man up a little bit.
You're like hour 3 of a Trump speech. Like, that's right. Everybody, Langdon's hair.
But also, hour 3 of a Trump speech, no one's hair looks as good as Langdon's. You know what I mean?
I don't know. I guess I was like, the back is such a big painkiller trigger, but he was on benzos, not painkillers.
But I thought it was because of a back thing.
Oh, that's right.
Do you have any theories about Whittaker's missing badge and how that's going to come back to haunt us?
I don't know. That's fucked up because like I wondered whether or not when he was asking about the Advil, whether he was suspicious of Langdon taking his badge, because Langdon also was like, retrace your steps, bro. And gaslighting him a little bit about it. I hope that's not the case.
Whoa.
And I wonder if now Whittaker is going to be like, my badge is on the table here where Langdon was standing.
And my badge is responsible for checking out 16 opioid pills.
But I also, look, we still have the dangling we haven't gotten a lot of depth into what's going on with Santos other than the fact that she has this romantic relationship with Garcia that seems to be somewhat one-sided, and that she has scars from cutting, and that there is a very pointed moment where she takes like a kind of suture and scalpel kit out of a drawer. I don't really know if they would go as far as to be like, not only did this guy relapse using his like coworker's ID card, thus like truly torpedoing. And then you start to get into like They didn't really tell everybody that he did this.
Yeah.
Robbie would then be on the hook for that. I think even more like it sometimes I have to remind myself that this is a TV show and not like
I think
Bergman, and we're just going to all start crying.
If you're reading the tea leaves of this season, and this is not meant to be a prediction because they very well may end it with something dramatic and surprising.
And if they're coming back sooner, they may cliff it a little bit.
They could. I think my sense of this season, this far into it, has been the writers and producers feeling confident, as they should, to experiment with the form that they've only just created and seeing if they can get away with quieting things just when our instinct is that they will be ratcheting up, and that the season may end with some hollowed out Jesus Christ, but we got to do it again tomorrow vibes. Less, I mean, the first season was an enormous, hideous, violent, traumatic tragedy.
Dana getting punched in the face.
But they ended with a beer in the park.
Sure.
We did it. And I don't know if the season's going to have that same triumph.
I don't think so.
But I do think one of their goals is to dampen or subvert our expectations. And so I think emotionally where it ends up will likely be different. And that's not necessarily in a place of dramatic violence coming home to roost with one of our characters.
We'll have our finale Pitt coverage for next Thursday, and hopefully I would love to have Noah back on the pod.
Do we have 2 more?
Nope.
Next week's the finale?
Yep. 9 p.m. April 16th.
We sure about that? Marisa Bella, I heard, was auditioning.
It's 15 episodes a season, right?
Yep.
Do you want to talk briefly about Top Chef?
Yeah, where are you at with it? Tell me.
I guess I was wrong. And spoilers for this week's Top Chef, but I was like taking out a third mortgage and putting it on Rhoda, and I lost it all.
Sweet Icarus. She flew too close to the sun.
An interesting case of, if I now I've watched this episode a couple of days ago, so forgive me if I get any details wrong, but I don't feel like she took, and nor should she have, maybe with the kids quickfire, kids judging the quickfire. I felt like she was like, I'm just going to make like a lamb, like shepherd's pie, and not really. I've seen this happen before where somebody is like, this is a stupid quickfire.
Yes.
And then goes into the final round and is like, I'm still him, and loses. I do not remember a 2-time elimination winner going out of the fucking show within 2 weeks after that.
It's a shocking fall. And I think generally because frontrunners have fallen with distressing regularity. And the best example of that being Kristen came back from Last Chance Kitchen to win her season, and no one's questioning her bona fides. I think, though, what was remarkable about Rhoda was that usually frontrunners fall for, a head-scratching cookery error or a failure with ambition and vision and not being able to execute. I rarely see someone just absolutely fuck up both.
Yeah,
like that was, and you could tell. Again, I think they're doing some good storytelling stuff for the edits. That like Tom was like, "This is ridiculous that she didn't know how to cook a fish or told us it was roasted or whatever, separate and apart from the squid ink stuff." How did you feel about the what's her name is injured, and so they're like, "We're going to give you a chance to leave."
I'm glad you asked me this because I have an opinion, which is I don't think she's gaining any kind of unfair advantage by skipping the quick fires, but something similar, not entirely similar, but something kind of like this happened on Survivor over the last couple of weeks, which is essentially 2 guys who were in something of an alliance together and thus targets of another group of people. One of them had a foot injury, and there was some speculation like, I wonder if this guy's going to have to take himself out of the game soon, so maybe we should get this other dude and then let medicine take this guy out, and we get 2 for the price of 1, basically. Jen has kind of just been in the middle for me. I can't really make a huge...
Also, she made a dip for an elimination
it looked like her focaccia was really nice, and everything, but I would say that if now she's on basically like, if you miss another quickfire,
you can't
out.
sit out. It's not optional.
Right. Yeah. I would love to know what the pre-existing rule is, like whether that's the first time this has happened, that someone is like, I'm taking a medical on quickfires, but we'll still cook eliminations.
Listen,
and it kind of speaks to the like flaw of decoupling the 2 halves of the show.
It's beautifully expressed. I would say that the conversation about load management is unavoidable at this point. And I'm not a fan. I think
I'm not a fan of load management or her getting to continue to cook if she can't do
as
the
a fan
show.
of the Philadelphia 76ers, I definitely have an opinion about players choosing when to play during the course of the season.
It turns out Dr. Darrell was right, and he needed his fucking appendix out. And like that's why it was weird that he was sick for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree. But
I'm just saying Sixers-wise.
Because that's the only time Embiid this season has taken himself out or been weird about when he's playing. I think, again, this is just off the dome, but I believe that there have been people who have injured themselves in quickfires and then had to be attended to and not completed it. But I've never seen anyone tap out twice and then show up steroided up for the... By the way, where's the drug test, frankly? Or can't they all get steroids? Because I would really cook a lot better if I just had a little...
But if I was Rhoda, I might feel away.
For sure.
I mean, I know everybody is like, we're all in this together, and Justin and her seem like a great couple. And I would say that my opinion of the chefs as people has like slowly gone up.
Yeah.
And my opinion of them as chefs has dipped a little bit from where it was in the beginning of the season.
I have two other takes for you. One, the Wildwater rafting park looks sick as hell. And I think you should go when you're in Denver this weekend.
It's in North Carolina.
Why did I think? Oh, that's right. Sorry. Can we
No,
delete
we
that?
can't. We can't. I love that.
Come on.
No. And I gotta tell you,
why did I think it was in Denver?
I just think that all those things are piss tunnels. and like to me, that is just like a giant floating public restroom. Now, I love a slide. Do you know what I mean?
Because you're just getting the slow trickle behind you? What do you mean? That's okay? You're either splashing out or you're not, buddy.
I think it's more of like a quick engage, but when it's like the lazy river, it's the lazy river of piss. Guys are slamming White Claws on edibles.
Now,
they're just letting it happen.
Again, I
Kids
feel
everywhere.
This is not, maybe it's just branding. This wasn't like Dorney Park's Wildwater Kingdom. This is presented as like the national
an extension
teams.
of, but I think that is a man-made monument to wildlife, but is still like, I bet that water smells bad.
Wow. This is the strongest take you've had this entire episode. You laid in wait while I hung myself on shows you didn't even deign to watch. And yet the entire water park industry just got bodied.
I think about water parks a lot. Because one of the single greatest moments of my life was at Wildwood. They have a ride that I don't think is
Wildwater Kingdom in Pennsylvania? Or
no,
Wildwood, New Jersey?
Yeah.
Okay. A lot of wilds in our childhood.
There was basically, you would walk up a ladder, I think, or steps, but it felt like a ladder forever. You would ride down a relatively wide chute that then cut off in midair and you were ejected out over a very deep pool. And that moment of coming out of the fucking chute, it was incredible. That's the best feeling I've ever had in my life, bar like 3 or 4 other things. But then everything else about water parks, I think, are pretty disgusting.
First of all, I'm sorry to inform you that the woke nanny state shut that park down quite some time ago. That level of fun/risk is no longer allowed due to municipal.
I mean, we had way more injuries back then, but we had better times.
Right. Well, we weren't load managing. You know what I mean? You
but
could go to the park
you don't
every
really
day.
See kids with like arm casts anymore because like people watch them and they're like, "Hey, don't climb that tree."
You don't think that like advances in medicine perhaps are contributing here?
Have you guys seen a kid with a cast recently? No. Their silence is deafening.
This is all child-free, this entire room.
I don't see a lot of children in general, I gotta say.
This is a good segue, actually, to my other takeaway of this episode.
I like going up to a kid who's like, have you ever broken your arm? No,
would you like to?
Yeah.
You know who you sound like right now?
Who?
My number one enemy on the show, Seeger.
Oh, and he was just like, I like practicing having babies.
Yeah, and he's just like, ha ha ha, fuck children in front of 3 children. Let me just say something. And you're not like this. You're a fun uncle. You're a lovely person.
Yeah.
That attitude sucks. That's stupid and you look lame. Like, it's okay if you don't want children, But it's not cool to be like, look at these little people.
I wanted children, but I was rendered infertile by Tori Park.
It was worth it. That time you Heisman'd into the warm New Jersey air. That brief second. When the rivers.
Forgive me, my unborn son. I must go for glory.
As the rivulets of other people's urine wicked off of your airborne body. You're like, it's never getting better than this unless I can tell Chris Jr.
I'll drink water while he's doing this. Yeah, dog.
Wanted to feel alive again.
Who's to say? Who's to say I didn't make the right choice, you know?
I think the listeners of this podcast feel like you made the right choice.
But Seeger, you gotta like, you're mic'd up, brother. You know, like when you're back at the loft in North Carolina, you can be like, ugh, kids, not my fave. I mean, but don't like shit talk 3 lovely children.
Very camera ready. That is a very, very challenging.
Ainsley, Wolfie, and
are these their names?
Kate something, Mary Kate.
Can I be real with you for a second? None of them have ever broken a bone. Those kids are helicoptered. I think maybe you're onto something. I just mean like that is historically, infamously the hardest type of panel for these people to cook for because and they always overthink it. And Rhoda being like, I will tell these children that the equivalent of being like Bambi is in this pot, as opposed to just being like, it's meat, enjoy meat and potatoes. Whereas the person who won made ice cream, like that was
his brother made pepperoni pizza. That was crazy, or sausage pizza.
That was smart.
Let's wrap it up here because we do have another podcast to record right now.
Yeah, and also I know it's getting clipped now, so we can just wrap it up.
Thanks to Kai, and Sarah, and we will be back on Sunday night to discuss the season 3 premiere of Euphoria.